sister. Let's take a moment to prepare our hearts as we move into our time of teaching this morning. Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts, Lord, may they be found acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, last year there was a report on CNN that I read, and it was one of the reports on one of the slower news days, right? So it's not that exciting, but I thought it was very interesting. It was about a lecture that was given in the United Kingdom by a lady named Eva. I'll say it wrong. Krakow. Eva Krakow. Eva Krakow is a renowned lecturer, and she's known for her lecture circuit. She lectures in psychology and research. She works for the Health and Wellness Research Group. So she talks a lot of different things about health and mental health and all of these different things. But on this day, she was reporting on and lecturing about the number of choices that our minds make in a day and how our brain activity works. And in this lecture, she talked about how the average person makes 35,000 decisions on an average day. 35,000 decisions. Now, bear in mind, some of those decisions are things like, what am I going to have for breakfast? Are the eggs going to be scrambled, over easy, sunny side up, poached, 5 minute, so, and what kind of socks am I going to wear, right? Like, some of the decisions are not really that earth-shattering decisions, right? Do I turn the seat warmers on or not? Right? Some of them we don't think too much about. But some of those decisions, and I'm going to just venture a guess, less than 1% of the decisions we make in a day are important decisions. I would say that some of those decisions truly impact our lives, even though they may seem like they're not important or seem simple decisions. Some of the simple decisions that we make are actually very important decisions, like, do I tailgate the car that cut me off on 96 on my way to work? I mean, do you tailgate the car that proverbially cut you off on your way to work, or do you just let it go? Do you flirt back at work because it's harmless and it's fun? Do I admit that the issue that happened at work was my fault, even though someone else is being blamed for it and nobody knows that it was really my fault? Do I repost the funny but yet inappropriate TikTok or Facebook post because I find it kind of funny, even though it may diminish my Christian witness online? Do I sign my kids up for one more activity, extracurricular activity on Sunday morning because they want to, or do I tell them no because I want to teach them the value of our worship time together as a family and as a community? Seemingly simple choices that have a direct impact on the direction of our lives and on the lives of the people around us. These aren't earth-shattering decisions. These are simple decisions. And what we're going to find today, as we focus on chapter 9 in the book of Proverbs, is that the choices that we make today determine the direction of our lives. The choices that we make today, not the choices that we made yesterday or the day before that, and none of the choices of our past, nor the choices that we're putting off for tomorrow. Not the things that, I'm going to do that tomorrow, I'm going to wait to decide. I'm saying the things that we are deciding right now, the things that we are thinking about right now, in this moment of our lives, these things that are going on right now determine where our lives are going to end up. And now, as we've talked about through this sermon series, Solomon, the author of Proverbs, is going to present two contrary concepts, wisdom and folly, right? And wisdom and folly are both expressed as people. And it's for a very specific reason, and we're going to have some more clarity on that today. Today we're going to call them wisdom and folly, or we could call them Lady Wisdom and Madame Folly if you wanted to make it more spicy. for a sense of discussion. I'm not going to. It's just going to be wisdom and folly. But if it helps you to conceptualize the difference between wisdom and folly, elevate wisdom folly and Madame Folly, or wisdom knowledge, or Lady Wisdom. Oh wow, I can't do it today at all. Hang on a second. I need the regular coffee. Lady Wisdom and Madame Folly. If that helps, use it. Wisdom and folly. And we're going to look at not only these invitations that they give to people, but also the destination of those invitations take us to. Chapter 9 shows us both wisdom and folly giving this invitation to a feast. And just to give you the obvious ending up front, one feast leads to satisfaction, the other feast leads to emptiness. And the goal is for you to see at the end of this, I want you to choose wisdom. Okay? So just so any of you who are ready to take a nap, that's the point. You can tune out for the rest of the time if you have to. But if you want to be a part this morning, I invite you to take out your Bibles, or just a Bible, if you only brought one, and open it to Proverbs. It's right after Psalms, right in the middle of the Bible. And we're going to be in chapter 9 this morning. And here we're going to look at Lady Wisdom, Madame Folly, or Wisdom and Folly. And once we get through this, we're going to contrast these two invitations. And then we're going to bring it all together and bring the series together about how we walk down the right path in this life. So we're going to start in chapter 9, verse 1. Wisdom has built her house. She has set up its 7 pillars. Now we're going to kind of go slow through this because we need to stop right there and look at wisdom's house, because it is extremely odd for an author in this time period to talk about a woman building a house. And I know last week we talked about the sexism, we talked about all of that. Let's get over that for now. Even today, I know a lot of the people here built their own houses, but even today we don't talk about women building houses very often, do we? So, let's talk about the woman wisdom building a house for a few moments. Because it's important here that the person wisdom, the woman wisdom, is building a house. It's important what kind of house she's building. There are 2 things to consider. 2 primary things that we have to understand about this house. One, well, I guess 2 things are 7 pillars. That's what we have to focus on. The first is the number 7, and the second is the fact that there are pillars or columns. These are 2 very important details about the house. Now, the number 7, let's focus on 7 first, because the number 7 is like this big thing in the Bible. How many of you have ever read about the number 7 in the Bible before? Some have? Okay, so the number 7 is, in the Bible, is usually used to describe something that is perfect. Okay? So the number 7, anybody who's studied like the followings of numerology in the Bible, the number 7 is often used to describe something that God has made that is perfect. Now let me give you one of the some 700 plus references to the number 7 in the Bible. Are you ready for this? The creation story is a 7-day story. God created the world in 6 days and rested on the 7th, and so the 7-day creation story. The Sabbath is on the 7th day. There were 7 of each clean animals that went onto the ark. 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine in Joseph's story. There were 7 lampstands in the temple in Jerusalem. There are 7 feasts for the people of Israel. Debts were released on the year of, on this year, I forget what the name of the year is on that feast, but that happened every how many years? 7, every 7 years. The number 7 appears more than 700 times in the Bible. Jesus said, how many times are you supposed to forgive someone? Not 7 times, but 77 times, right? Like this number 7 has a meaning that is beyond the number. And in Scripture, it's often more metaphorical, just to represent the perfect amount. Okay? So, when we read 7 pillars, you could say, yes, there's 7 physically, the number 7 columns, but there is an illustration to that number that it's a perfect house. Because it has 7 columns, or 7 pillars. Now, there's something important to be said about pillars, too. Because I don't know if you know anything about construction in the Middle East, but most houses did not have pillars. Most houses did not have columns. If you constructed a house with pillars or columns, it meant you had a lot of money. It meant that you constructed a house with money, because you didn't just construct a house for your family or a couple families to live in, not the box with the roof, right? That's not what you built. If you had pillars, you constructed the pillars in a semicircle type of a thing, or a circle, and then the roof attached to it, and you had a courtyard kind of in the middle. So you didn't just have a house, you kind of had a mansion. So if you had a house with pillars, it's not like the pillars in the front of the house, it's pillars inside the house. So you had a way to enter, and you had almost like a courtyard type of a thing going on in your home. And so it wasn't just a house, it was a rich person's house. So when Solomon says that wisdom has built a house out of 7 pillars, he's saying that wisdom has built a beautiful mansion. Do you understand? Does that make sense? It's not just a house. This is like saying, I built a dream house. This is my retirement home. This is the perfect home, a place where anyone would want to be. And once the mansion was built, wisdom goes forward and makes the place ready to receive people. Let's keep going in verse 2. She has prepared her meats and mixed her wine, and she has also set her table. So wisdom has not only built a beautiful home, but personally went out to the livestock and oversaw the butchering and preparation of meat. Then wisdom goes to the cellars and oversees the brewing of wine and sets a feast for everyone. A feast that was composed of all of the things that wisdom already had in the mansion. Built a mansion, butchered the livestock, brewed the mead, brewed the wine, got everything ready, and created this feast, set the table, and got everything ready. This is a picture of a great thing. This is a picture of a great thing for people, right? All of this was set up for an opportunity for us to participate with wisdom. It's a picture of plenty, a picture of fullness, a picture of satisfaction in the making. And then wisdom sets out the invitation in verse 3. She has sent out her servants, and she calls from the highest point of the city, let all who are simple come to my house. To those who have no sense, she says, come eat my food and drink my wine I have mixed. Leave your simple ways, and you will live. Walk in the light of insight. So wisdom invites the people to come to her home and feast by going to the highest place in the city. And as we know, the highest place in the city is the city gate. The highest place in the city is always the city gate. And so she sends her servants, go to the city gate and invite everyone to come to my house, eat my food, drink my wine, be a part of this thing. Come and partake, come be satisfied, come be fulfilled in this life, and have all that you want. And by doing so, you're going to live, and you're going to leave the ways of folly behind. Wisdom is calling in the streets, Solomon says. And all that I have is yours. All that you have to do is come to the feast. Come and enjoy what I have prepared for you. That is the invitation of wisdom. That is the preparation of wisdom. So let's skip forward and look at the invitation of folly. And we're going to do that by skipping down to verse 13. So in verse 13, we find the counterpoint. We find folly's invitation to her feast. So it starts out by saying in verse 13, folly is an unruly woman. She is simple and knows nothing. She sits at the door of her house on a seat at the highest point of the city, calling out to those who pass by, who go straight on their way. Now, some translations that you may be reading say that folly is loud and obnoxious. Okay? But she sits at the doorway of her house. It's not a fancy house. She didn't build a 7-pillar house. She is at the gate of the city, though. So notice that Wisdom and Folly's invitation comes at the same point, the same place. But she doesn't prepare a meal with her own hands. She doesn't butcher her own livestock. She doesn't mix wine. She doesn't make ready or prepare for anything. Instead, she sits at the gate, sits in her doorway, and calls out to those who are passing by, who are, quote, going on their way, going on the straight way. Now, to me, this is a very clear picture, if there ever was one, of the dangers that we face today when we succumb to folly or foolishness in our lives. Because folly or foolishness isn't going out of its way to invite us in. It's not trying very hard. It's sitting there waiting for us to make eye contact as we walk by with our busy lives. I remember right after Aaron and I got married, we took a trip to Chicago together for the first time. We took the train, so we didn't have a car. And this is before the time of Ubers and rideshare. Yes, I remember the time before. You remember that too, right? There was this thing back then called taxi cabs. Okay? And when you went to Chicago and you didn't have a car, you had to get a taxi if you wanted to go somewhere. I know this may be foreign to some of you, but that's what it was. And so we came out of the Econo Lodge, and I'll be honest with you first though. Growing up here in rural Michigan, I didn't have a lot of experience with taxi cabs. I didn't have any experience with them in Lansing or Grand Rapids or anywhere else. Even in my time abroad, when I lived, was in the military, didn't use a lot of taxis. Just married, proud guy, right? We come out of the Econo Lodge in Chicago. This is the first day we were there. Came out of the hotel. I'm like, all right, we need to get a cab. This is going to be fun. I've seen it in the TV shows and on the movies. I know exactly what I'm going to get into here. I walk out onto the street, and, it's like 4 lanes and one way, and I'm like, there's no cars, and I don't know what I'm doing, and I make eye contact with this guy who's kind of standing on the corner of the street, and he hails a cab, and then he sells it to me. I obviously was a very easy mark for him. We got a cab. What can I say? Folly sits in her doorway and looks for easy marks. People going on their busy lives, going on the straight path of what they're doing, and are just distracted or lured in. People that already have a plan, know where they're going, know what they're doing, but she's there and she just gives this invitation, which starts exactly the same way as wisdom's invitation does. Let's look at the next verse. This invitation that Folly gives is word for word what wisdom says. Let all who are simple come to my house. To those who have no sense, she says, this is where it changes. Stolen water is sweet. Food eaten in secret is delicious. Come in. Enjoy yourself. Eat what is not yours. Stolen water and secret bread, temptation and sin. This is what folly is offering. The things that give us instant pleasure now, but literally have no substance for our lives. Now, I was going to use Taco Bell as a reference, but I think there is some nutritional value there somewhere, so I'm going to say sweet and low. This is like eating a pack of sweet and low. Has anyone ever eaten a pack of sweet and low? If you do, you will find that it is very sweet. And it will be very sweet for a moment, but it literally has no value to you. That is what sin is. Something that in the moment is very enjoyable, but has no value. That instant gratification has no substance, but feels good in the moment. That is how sin presents itself to us. And worse off is the reality of where that temptation and that sin leads us. In verse 18, but little do they know that the dead are there, and that her guests are deep in the realm of the dead. The future that awaits those who enter the house of folly is death. That's what Solomon is saying. Sure, some instant gratification in the moment, but in the long run, death. So here we have one invitation for death and one invitation for a full life, an abundant life. Folly and wisdom. They both present themselves with the same message. Come to my house and eat. But this is the choice that we make in our lives. We are asked the question, what are you going to do? The question is the same. Do we choose the house of satisfaction, the house of wisdom, or do we choose the house that leads to death, the house of folly? And on the onset, the question is the same. Come to my house, eat my food. The invitation to both is the same, but the outcome for each is drastically different. So how do we choose which path to take? How do we know whether we are living a life of godly wisdom or worldly folly? How do we know which way is the right way? How do we know the right path? If the question is the same, how do we know which door we're supposed to go through? That's really the question, right? Well, lucky for us, there's the center of this passage. And the center of this passage is a quasi-litmus test to help us decide if we're walking the path of wisdom or we're walking the path of folly. So let's jump back to verse 7. And this is where we get into some more good stuff here. Verse 7 says, whoever corrects a mocker invites insults. Whoever rebukes the wicked incurs abuse. Do not rebuke mockers, or they will hate. Well, they will hate you. Rebuke the wise, and they will love you. So Solomon is pretty generic here in what he's saying about everything that is folly. If you're a mocker, or a person of folly, if you're walking in foolishness, and you're given godly wisdom, if you're given correction, meaning godly wisdom says you should be doing something else. Now, when I say godly wisdom, I mean the wisdom of God. There's a reason, a specific reason why Solomon continually talks about wisdom as a person, not as a general concept. Because true wisdom is not some nebulous thing. True wisdom is not something that you just know or understand. Godly wisdom is the knowledge that God gives us. It is God's knowledge shared with us. And so, if we are going about our lives acting a fool, following a path of folly, in our lives, and God, or a representative of God, could be a family member, could be a friend, could be a complete stranger, who knows? But someone gives us a correction and tells us godly wisdom that the way we're going is not the way we should be going. And we respond by insulting and abusing the correction. That Solomon is saying, we're a fool. We're walking the path of folly. Because if you are on the path of folly, if you are living in the world of worldly foolishness, you do not want to be corrected by God. The way that you react to criticism is a surefire way to determine whether you are on the path of folly or the path of wisdom. Let's look at the next verse if you don't believe me. Let's keep going because it tells us right here. Instruct the wise, and they will be wiser still. Teach the righteous, and they will add to their learning. When you are in the house of wisdom, when you are not just being wise because you're smart, but you are being wise because you are connected to the source of wisdom, the person of wisdom, who is God himself. When God tells you more, you get excited about learning more. You don't get mad that God told you something else. You don't abuse God because God said, there's more for you to do today. You don't get upset with God's messenger for correcting you to go more down God's path. You get excited about it. How we react to godly criticism is a telltale sign of what path we are on. And I know what you're going to ask. How do I know it's godly criticism? Because we criticize each other all the time, whether we know it or not. And I'm glad you asked that. Thank you. The answer is simple. Did it come from God? That's a crappy answer, Tim. How do I know if it came from God? I'm not talking about religious traditions. I'm not talking about established ceremonies. I'm not talking about worldly beliefs, and I'm not talking about social norms of our culture. I'm talking about identifying where the criticism is coming from. And here's the truth. I cannot tell you if it's godly wisdom because I am not there and I am not you. And I don't know what's going on in your life, and I don't know who is criticizing you. And so I recommend that you take it to God because of what comes next in verse 10, which says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. For through wisdom your days will be many, and years will be added to your life. If you are wise, your wisdom will reward you. If you are a mocker, you alone will suffer. Proverbs 9:10 is pretty much the theme of the entire book of Proverbs. And it's what we call, in the church world, Hebrew parallelism. Now, Hebrew parallelism means that in order to understand the first part, you have to know the second part. That's all it means. And so, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. In order to understand that first part, you have to understand the second part, which says that knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. The knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. Knowledge of God, knowing God, is where it all begins. And I'm not talking about just knowing about God, understanding that there is a God, or believing that God exists. Solomon says personally knowing God is the key to understanding. Personally knowing God is the fear of the Lord. When we talked about the fear of the Lord earlier in this series, we talked about when you personally know God and you understand that God is God and you are not, it directs how you respond to God. It puts you in a sense of awe. It puts you in a sense of mystery. It puts you in a sense of reverence. Knowing who God is gives you a fear of the Lord. And Solomon says that personally knowing God is the fear of the Lord, which is the beginning of wisdom. When you personally know God, you understand and you gain wisdom. When you know about God, or believe, when you know about God, right, or you believe that there is a God, or you are open to the possibility of a God, you're disconnected. Yes, there's still a God. Yes, God still loves you. Sure. But being able to understand godly wisdom in your life becomes almost impossible because you're not connected to the source of wisdom, which is God himself. Not the wisdom of the world, not intelligence, not rational thinking, not logical thinking, but divine wisdom, which is the wisdom of God given to us. And this is why Jesus talks so much about being connected with God, about being connected with Christ. Which is why I love John 15 so much. Right? It's one of the easiest illustrations for me to understand as someone who gardens and has fruit trees. When Jesus said, I am the vine and you are the branches, if you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. But apart from me, you can do nothing. If we do not remain connected to the source of wisdom, we cannot expect ourselves to be able to choose the path of wisdom in our lives. We cannot expect ourselves to be able to understand and apply divine wisdom in our lives. Solomon knew it. Jesus knew it. But it's up to us to actually do it and live it. So how do we do it? That's the question. How? It's all well and good, Tim. Great speech, coach. But how do we do it? How do we actually do it in our lives? It's all well and good to talk about church, but I live in the real world. I have a real life. So let's go over a couple of practical, simple things that we can actually do, starting today, to help us stay connected to God, but also help us stay on that path of wisdom in our lives. So first, the first thing that we need to do, as Solomon teaches us, is we need to respond to criticism well. This is what Solomon is telling us in this passage. How we respond to criticism, and our choices to respond to criticism matter. We need to identify, is this godly wisdom or not? We need to step back before we respond and pray about the criticism. Is this you, God, telling me that I need to change my path? Or is this some worldly foolishness that I need to ignore? We need to know first if this criticism is a criticism from God that is meant to keep us on the path of wisdom or not. And if so, we need to listen to that criticism and grow from it. And if not, we have been wise enough to evaluate it and keep ourselves from getting angry and responding in a bad way. And we have kept ourselves in a healthier place at the same time. Because how we respond to godly criticism is a litmus test whether we are walking the path of folly or we are walking the path of wisdom. Second thing we need to do, and I think this is the most important. Is everybody awake? This is the most important thing I'm going to say today. Everybody ready for it? All right, here we go. We need to stay connected, to reconnect, or get connected with God, the source of wisdom. If you have never dedicated your life to Christ, I would love to pray with you after church. But for most of us here today, we need to focus our attention on staying connected or reconnecting with Christ in our lives and with God. And to do that, there is one thing in my mind, one thing that we need to do, one thing that we fail to do, one way that we all fall short. One thing. Everybody ready? The one thing. If we want to reconnect or stay connected, there's one thing, one word. Are you ready? Is everybody hyped? This is it. Not as excited as I am. Intentionality. I know. That was not the response I was looking for. Intentionality is where we fail. We need to intentionally stay connected. We need to intentionally reconnect. That means we need to intentionally take the time, set aside time in our lives, prioritize time in our lives to pray, read the scriptures, take time in silence with God. If we don't intentionally take time to to invest in our side of the relationship with God, then it's no one else's fault but our own if we are not connected to God. If you have ever found yourself asking why God does not seem present in your life, I ask you, when was the last time you were present for God? Because for me in my life, intentionality is the one thing that falls off. You start a scripture reading program, and 3 weeks in, it falls away. You start trying to pray every day, and a week later, you're like, okay, that was fun, but I got other things to do. I have more things that I have to prioritize. You get into a small group, and it's fun for a few weeks, and then you're like, you know what, I really want to go bowling on Thursday nights now. It's not a high priority. We stop being intentional about our side of the relationship. And when that happens, we stop being connected. It's kind of like, my kids are still in home, but I see this in the movies, so it has to be true. A lot of you have kids that are no longer in the home. And I've talked with some of you in the past about kids that call home when they only when they need something. Now, if an adult child of yours calls when they need something, and only when they need something, you're going to answer the phone, right? And you're going to help them, right? Because you love them. Well, how is your relationship? When we become disconnected, and the only time we go to God is when we need something, our relationship is strained. It's disconnected. Yes, God's going to answer the phone. God is always there for us, but the relationship is strained. God's side of the relationship is always strong, but our side to Him is not. That's why intentionality is so important. So, in my mind, use whatever means that you have to intentionally stay connected, to reconnect or get connected with your relationship with Christ, with your relationship with God, using all of the spiritual disciplines that you have, whether it's prayer, whether it's reading the Bible, whether it's being in small groups, whether it's meditating, whether it's going for a walk in the woods, whether it's reading books about faith, whatever it is that you do that is a spiritual discipline, intentionally do those to remain connected. The last thing that we need to do, our ability to walk the path of the wise is guided by our understanding of what a path of faith should be. We like to model off of something. All of us do. We like to say, this is the goal, that's what I'm trying to achieve. We like to say, that's what it means to be a person of faith, that's what it looks like, that's what I'm going to aspire to be like. I want to be like that person, even though we should never say that. I want to be like this character trait. I want to do more like this. We need to know what a faithful follower of Jesus Christ looks like in our world today, so that we can be more like that. And so to help us with this last one, we're going to start a new teaching series next week. And it's going to be a little bit longer teaching series, because I feel that this is a very important topic that we all need to understand. It's going to be called A Faith That Works. And we're going to work through the book of James starting next week. And so I encourage you for the next 8 weeks to read through the book of James as much as you can. Because the purpose of the book of James is to teach how to live out your faith, a faith in action in the world, which is something that we all struggle with. It gives us a model. This is what it looks like. So as we close this series of Proverbs, know that the rest of this book, the rest of the book of Proverbs, is full of wisdom for us to consume. There's the 33 statements of wisdom. There's all kinds of one-liners in here that you can do. It's like, as a dog returns to his own vomit, so too a fool returns to his foolishness. Gems like that one. There's really good ones in there too. About money, about relationships, about how to protect your heart, about how to avoid evil, about how to deal with failure. But understand that the latter half of the book of Proverbs is literally statements, phrases, wise phrases, like a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, like that, and should be read as such. Teaching phrases that they would have taught children with. So use them as such. Read through them. They're good. Some of them are confusing because they were written at a different time. But they were there to teach wisdom. But always remember that the author of genuine wisdom, not worldly wisdom, the author of real wisdom, true wisdom, genuine wisdom, the wisdom that matters in our lives, the wisdom that leads us to a bright future, into a prosperous life, the wisdom that fills us in our lives, is the wisdom of God. Lady Wisdom is a picture of God. The wisdom of God that is given to us as we are connected to God in this life. And we have access to that wisdom when we stay connected to the source. Let's pray. God of genuine wisdom, wisdom beyond this world and our lives, we ask that you would come into our lives in the way that only you can, that you would give us the ability to see clearly the choices that are in front of us, so that we would choose the path that brings honor and glory to you, that we would live lives of faithful followers of you and your Son. Help us to stay connected, to reconnect to you. Give us the willpower needed to remain dedicated and intentional to our relationship with you. Lord God, we ask all of these things in the name of your Son, Jesus the Christ. It's in his name that we pray. Amen.